Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Peach's arrival in town is like a ripple in still water, at first subtle, almost unnoticed, but carrying a weight that promises to swell into a wave capable of smashing everything in its path. She emerges from a bus that barely slows before grinding to a halt at the dusty station, her figure wrapped in an oversized coat despite the mild weather. There is something spectral about her, a presence that feels as though it has stepped straight out of an old photograph. And perhaps that's fitting, because all that's left of her connection to this place is exactly that: one torn picture, the left side missing, and with it half of a truth no one wants to confront. The whispers begin before she even crosses Main Street. Some say she is the mother of Leslie Thomas. Others claim she's a fraud chasing after a payday. There's no paperwork, no hard evidence, only those fragmented memories that creep into Leslie's dream memories she has tried, for years, to dismiss as products of a child's overactive imagination. But Peaches isn't here for nostalgia. She comes with a dangerous proposition: help her uncover the truth about a massive inheritance buried deep in the Thomas family's past, and in return, she will reveal who Leslie really is. Leslie listens, guarded, her fingers curled tight around the paper cup of coffee they've ordered at a corner cafe. The clink of spoons and low hum of chatter around them only make Peach's words sharper, more pointed. An inheritance. The kind that could alter lives, shift loyalties, and awaken enemies. But Peaches doesn't present it as a gift. She offers it like a transaction, one with a cost Leslie hasn't yet calculated. Across town, Ted Richardson is in the middle of his own unraveling. Once confident, charming, and quick with the kind of smile that smooths over doubt, he is blindsided when Nicola's wife laces divorce papers in front of him. It happens in their kitchen, with morning light spilling in through the blinds, making the scene look almost peaceful. It is anything but. Nicole's hands don't tremble as she slides the envelope across the table. She thinks this is her move, her choice. But Ted's stillness in that moment plants a seed of doubt in her mind. She had planned to leave him for her own reasons, to reclaim some piece of herself that had eroded over years of quiet compromises. Yet something about the way he meets her gaze flat, unreadable, makes her wonder if he saw this coming. The doubt sharpens into suspicion when she begins uncovering details he never meant for her to see, a web of hidden bank accounts, some under aliases, others offshore. The sums are staggering, and the movement of the funds is erratic, as though money is being funneled out before anyone notices. Nicole's mind races with possibilities. Could the divorce be exactly what Ted wants: a clean break, a perfect alibi as he disappears with everything? Or is she simply seeing shadows where there are none? When Nicole brings the discovery to her parents, Vernon and Anita Dupree, they react with immediate outrage. Vernon, a man whose voice can command a boardroom and silence a roomful of critics, makes it clear that the family stands behind Nicole. Anita, still elegant in her later years, nods firmly, her hand covering Nicole's in a silent pledge of support. But beneath that surface, a fracture forms. In private, Anita lingers a second too long before answering certain questions, her eyes shifting in a way Nicole can't quite read. The family's attention is soon pulled toward Dani, Nicole's sister, whose spiraling guilt is becoming impossible to ignore. Dani has convinced herself she is the reason Haley Hamilton suffered a miscarriage. She replays the weeks leading up to it over and over, trying to identify the moment where her words or actions tipped the balance toward tragedy. But the truth is far more complex and far darker than she imagines. The loss of Haley's baby is tangled in a covert transaction between Ted and Peaches, a shadow deal whose ripples have touched more lives than anyone dares to admit. The secrecy presses in on every side, wrapping the family in an invisible net. Leslie finds herself caught between two competing instincts: the desire to unearth the truth and the fear of what that truth might do to her. Nicole begins to feel the pull of two opposite roads, one that leads toward vengeance, the other toward forgiveness, and she is no longer sure which path will keep her whole. Dani teeters on the edge of confession, weighing the relief of honesty against the risk of detonating what little stability remains. And through it all stands Peaches, an easy scapegoat for the chaos. She plays her role well, disruptive, evasive, always one step away from saying something that will turn the air electric. But there's a glint in her eyes that hints at a purpose no one has fully grasped yet. She may, in fact, be the only one trying to hold back something much worse, a scheme large enough to take down both the Dupree and Thomas families in a single night. The chain of events tightens when Peaches leans into Leslie during one of their clandestine meetings. "They've kept more from you than you realize," she says, her tone almost tender. "Your name, your blood, your future, it's all been hidden away. And I can give it back to you. But you'll have to help me first." Her conditions are precise. Leslie must help her secure a particular file currently in Ted's possession. Without it, neither of them can prove anything. The document, she claims, will lead directly to the inheritance. Nicole, meanwhile, is conducting her own quiet surveillance. She follows Ted discreetly after a late-night meeting, trailing him through streets lit in orange and shadow. When she sees him with a woman who has the same posture, the same sharp profile as Peaches, a chill settles over her. She can't hear their words, but the familiarity between them feels like betrayal. It also raises new questions. Is Ted working with Peaches or against her? Elsewhere, Danny makes an unannounced visit to Haley, determined to apologize. But Haley's reception is cold. She won't meet Danny's eyes, her hands restless as she busies herself with trivial tasks. It is only in those clipped exchanges that Danny senses something unspoken, a secret larger and more damning than the miscarriage itself. The visit ends without resolution, leaving Danny more unsettled than before. That same week, an anonymous envelope arrives at Nicole's doorstep. Inside is a copy of a will, but the name of the beneficiary has been cleanly cut out. It's a taunt, a provocation, and a warning all in one. She takes it to Vernon and Anita, hoping they might recognize the document, but both deny ever seeing it. Still, Nicole notices Anita's eyes narrow in thought before she forces them wide again, smiling too quickly. Then comes the revelation that Ted has been operating under a false identity to open accounts abroad. Nicole enlists Vernon's help to gather evidence, but Anita remains curiously resistant, raising objections about privacy, legality, even morality. Nicole hears only the hesitance, and it plants a dangerous idea. Her mother may be protecting someone or something. Peaches finally reveals the catch to Leslie. To claim the inheritance, Leslie must prove a blood relationship, and Peaches herself is the proof. But this proof comes at a price. Leslie must break into Ted's world and retrieve that file, an act that will not only pit her against a man she barely knows, but also risk exposure to whatever network he's entangled in. In another corner of this tightening web, Danny overhears Haley on a hushed phone call. The name Ted slides out between sentences, freezing Danny where she stands. The conversation's timing just before Haley's miscarriage makes the connection impossible to ignore. Danny retreats without confronting her, but her mind is already making dangerous leaps. As if to confirm that the stakes are escalating, a fire rips through a section of the Dupree family's storage facility. The damage is selective, almost surgical, destroying shelves of old financial records while leaving other sections untouched. The security cameras go dark exactly 5 minutes before the blaze begins, a detail that screams premeditation. The pressure reaches a breaking point when Nicole finally confronts Ted. The setting is intimate, her living room at night, the rain ticking against the windows, but the conversation is anything but. She expects denial, bluster, maybe even anger. Instead, Ted leans back and admits it plainly. He is not the mastermind here. He is a pawn. There is someone else, someone powerful enough to orchestrate every move and erase any trail. And that person, Ted warns, is moving fast to eliminate the last pieces of evidence. Leslie, digging through Peach's belongings in search of answers, stumbles across a photograph that stops her cold. Vernon stands in the frame, younger, with an arm around a woman who could be Leslie's mother, except the date stamped in the corner predates Leslie's birth by over a year. Danny, worn down by guilt, finally breaks and confesses to Haley that she believes she caused the miscarriage. But instead of accusation, Haley offers a devastating truth. the baby wasn't her husband's. It was Ted's. It all comes to a head in a chaotic family meeting where accusations fly faster than reason can catch them. In the middle of it, Peaches rises, her voice cutting through the noise. The inheritance isn't money, she says. It's a secret. And if it comes out, it will send every one of you to prison. And somewhere else, in a dimly lit room far from the uproar, a figure we have never seen before steps into view. They sit at a table, place a scorched file in front of them, and open it. The most crucial pages have survived the fire, their edges blackened, but their words intact. The game, it seems, is only beginning. The air after the family confrontation hung heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Leslie left the room first, her footsteps sharp against the marble floor, the photograph burning a hole in her thoughts. Vernon's presence in that image was no coincidence, every instinct told her so. She needed answers, but she couldn't confront him directly. Not yet. Peaches had taught her that knowledge was a weapon, and you never reveal you're armed until the moment you intend to strike. Nicole stayed behind, watching her parents through narrowed eyes. Anita was speaking softly to Vernon, their words muffled, but their body language speaking volumes. Her mother's hand lingered on Vernon's arm, not as a gesture of comfort, but as a silent caution to hold the line. Nicole realized they were united in something that had nothing to do with her divorce, or even the inheritance. It was deeper, older, and infinitely more dangerous. In another part of town, Danny wandered aimlessly through dim streets, Haley's revelation echoing inside her. Ted. The name felt different now, heavier. She thought about the nights she had seen him with Haley, moments she had dismissed as casual acquaintanceship. The truth recast them in a sinister light. Danny's guilt shifted into something else, anger. It wasn't just about the miscarriage anymore, it was about betrayal, layered and deliberate. She began to consider that her own family's survival might depend on dismantling Ted's influence piece by piece. Ted himself was in motion, but not visibly. His public appearances became rarer, his routines less predictable. Nicole's shadowing efforts turned up dead ends, as though he'd slipped into an entirely separate life. Yet she noticed pattern transactions that spiked every time Peaches moved locations. It was a signal, though she didn't yet understand the message. She began to wonder if the connection between them was built on more than money or leverage. Peaches, for her part, was no longer hovering on the fringes. She had started visiting Leslie's apartment openly, walking through the front door in broad daylight, daring anyone to confront her. But each visit came with a piece of the puzzle: names, dates, places, clues too specific to dismiss. The picture she was building was one of a conspiracy so meticulously constructed that it had survived for decades, protected by silence and mutual benefit. Anita grew more unsettled as the days passed. Her once flawless composure began to crack in small, visible ways, a hand trembling as she poured tea, a pause too long before answering simple questions. Vernon noticed and responded not with comfort, but with increased control, dictating their schedules, intercepting calls, even monitoring the staff more closely. His behavior only confirmed Nicole's suspicion that he had as much to lose as anyone if the truth surfaced. Then came the second envelope. It arrived at Nicole's clinic, hand-delivered by someone who refused to give a name. Inside was a photograph, Ted and Vernon together, standing outside a building Nicole recognized as a storage facility in another state. The date printed on the back was recent weeks, not years ago. The discovery hit like a strike of lightning. Whatever Ted was doing, Vernon was not just aware of it, was part of it. Leslie's investigation took her to the edges of the city, to a warehouse Peaches claimed once held the key to the inheritance. But when they arrived, the interior was stripped bare, the floors still showing scorch marks that mirrored those in the Dupree storage fire. Someone was systematically erasing every trace of the past. Peaches didn't seem surprised, only resigned, as if she had expected to arrive too late. Danny's trajectory shifted again when she overheard Vernon on a phone call. He mentioned a meeting, one that would secure the next 20 years. She followed him discreetly, ending up outside a dimly lit bar where he met with Ted. Through the grimy window, Danny could see the two men leaning close, their conversation tense. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see Ted sliding a folder across the table. A folder the exact size and shape of the one Peaches had been searching for. Nicole decided she could no longer play defense. She arranged her own meeting with Peaches, a risky move given her uncertainty about where the woman's loyalties truly lay. They met in a parking garage, the echo of their voices bouncing off concrete. Nicole laid out her proposition, help her bring down Ted and Vernon, and in return, she would ensure Peaches walked away untouched, free to claim whatever truth she wanted about Leslie. Peaches listened without expression, then said, "You're still thinking too small. It's not just them you need to worry about." The warning proved prophetic. That night, Leslie returned home to find her apartment door ajar, the lock broken. Inside, nothing was stolen, at least, nothing obvious. But her desk drawers were open, papers scattered, and the torn photograph of her and Peaches was gone. It was a message, one she understood instantly: stop digging, or the next loss will be personal. Meanwhile, Danny confronted Haley one last time, pressing for the full story. This time, Haley relented. Ted had promised her protection in exchange for silence, but when the pregnancy threatened to expose him, things had turned. Haley's voice shook as she described the night she lost the baby, hinting at a presence in the room, someone else besides Ted who made sure the truth would never come out. Danny realized that person could only be Vernon. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was monstrous. Vernon, Ted, and someone still in the shadows had been working in concert for years, moving money, burying secrets, and destroying anyone who threatened to reveal them. The inheritance wasn't just tied to Leslie's identity, it was tied to an entire network of influence and blackmail that spanned far beyond their town. Anita, perhaps sensing the inevitable, began quietly warning Nicole to step back. She used words like dangerous people and forces you can't control, her voice low and urgent. It was the first time Nicole saw her mother truly afraid. But Nicole was past the point of retreat. She began documenting everything: recordings, photographs, bank statements, preparing for the moment when the truth would have to come into the light. Peaches, now fully entwined in the web, made her own move. She contacted Danny directly, bypassing Leslie and Nicole. Her offer was simple: work together to retrieve the folder from Ted before he disappeared for good. Danny, driven by anger and a need for justice, agreed. The plan was risky, requiring them to intercept Ted during a scheduled meeting with Vernon. They would have only minutes to get in and out without being seen. But when the night came, nothing went as expected. Vernon arrived alone, and instead of Ted, a third figure stepped from the shadows, a person none of them had ever seen before, but whose presence radiated authority. In their hands was the scorched file from the family meeting, its pages still intact. That moment shattered every assumption they had made. Ted wasn't the central figure, and Vernon wasn't the sole architect. There was someone else, someone who had been pulling the strings from the beginning, orchestrating every alliance and betrayal. The realization landed heavy in their chests. They had been fighting the wrong enemy all along, and now the real one was standing right in front of them. The stranger placed the file on the table, opening it slowly. Their eyes moved between Vernon, Danny, and Peaches, a faint smile playing on their lips. "Shall we discuss the future?" they asked. The words were simple, but the implication was clear: this was far from over, and whatever came next would force every one of them to choose a side. The stranger's question lingered in the room like a toxin, invisible but potent. Danny felt her pulse in her throat, every instinct telling her to walk away, but her feet stayed rooted. Peaches didn't flinch. Leslie stood in the doorway, eyes darting between the faces, trying to read the shifting currents. Nicole was the last to arrive, having followed Vernon here, and her gaze locked instantly on the scorched file. The stranger slid the folder across the table with a deliberate slowness. "Everything you think you know," they said, "is a fragment. Here's the whole picture." The pages inside revealed a timeline stretching back decade: financial transfers, falsified birth records, land deeds that had been passed like playing cards among the Thomas and Dupree families. And in the middle of it all, a name Leslie had never seen before but now understood intimately, her own, written beside both families' ledgers, connecting her to every decision, every cover-up. It wasn't just an inheritance, it was a legacy of crime. Money laundered through charities, properties purchased and burned for insurance, debts erased through intimidation. The inheritance Peaches had spoken of was less about wealth and more about control. Whoever possessed the knowledge in this file could bend the entire network to their will or destroy it completely. Vernon broke the silence first. "This doesn't leave this room." His voice was controlled, but the vein in his temple betrayed him. Nicole stepped forward, her voice like steel. "It's already left this room. You've been careless." She placed her phone on the table, the screen glowing with a live audio feed. Somewhere in the city, a secure drive was recording every word. The stranger's smile widened. "Good. I was hoping you'd think bigger." They revealed themselves as the architect of the original deal between the families, someone who had remained in the background precisely to avoid the mistakes Ted and Vernon had made. "You all thought you were players," they said. "But you were pieces. And now I'm offering you the board." Danny's anger flared. "You're offering us blackmail and calling it power." Peaches placed a hand on Danny's arm, not to silence her, but to steady her. She had seen enough power plays to know when to wait for the right move. Leslie's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room. "I want out. I don't want the money, the name, any of it." The stranger regarded her for a long moment. "You can't want out of something you were born into. Walking away doesn't erase the blood." Nicole's choice came in that moment. She took the file, tucked it under her arm, and turned to leave. "I'm done letting you dictate the terms," she told Vernon, her voice shaking but certain. "If this burns us all, so be it." The stranger didn't stop her, which made Nicole's skin crawl. Outside, rain slicked the pavement as she crossed to her car. In her gut, she knew the stranger wasn't worried because they already had perhaps even more damning evidence than what she held. Inside, Peaches leaned toward Leslie. "This is the only chance you'll have to shape what happens next. If you walk now, you're just a name in their story. If you stay, you write the ending." Leslie looked to Danny, who nodded once. Whatever they decided, they'd decide together. In the days that followed, the network began to fracture. Vernon tried to rally his allies, but whispers of his meeting with the stranger spread faster than he could contain them. Ted resurfaced briefly, only to disappear again. Rumors placed him overseas, possibly dead. Anita, weary and brittle, retreated from public life entirely, leaving Nicole to face the social fallout alone. Peaches and Danny formed an unlikely alliance, tracking down smaller players in the network, flipping them one by one with promises of safety in exchange for testimony. Leslie, reluctantly, became the public face of the reckoning, her interviews hinting at truths without ever fully revealing them, baiting the larger fish to make mistakes. The stranger remained in the shadows, their influence felt but their presence rare. It was clear they were letting the families tear themselves apart, stepping in only when necessary to tip the balance. The final blow came when Nicole released select pages of the file to the press, enough to ignite investigations, but not enough to expose Leslie's full connection. It was a calculated risk, one that forced the authorities to act while preserving some measure of control over the narrative. In the chaos that followed, the inheritance, both the money and the secrets, lost its luster. What had once been a symbol of power became a liability, a target no one wanted to hold. Vernon faced formal charges. Anita left town. Danny and Peaches disappeared from public view entirely. Leslie stood alone in front of the courthouse one gray morning, the press shouting her name. She said nothing, only looked into the cameras with an expression that could be read as defiance or resignation. Somewhere in the crowd, the stranger watched, unseen, the faintest trace of a smile on their lips. The board had been cleared. The game was over. But in the world they'd inherited, endings were only pauses before the next move.